Why, hello there, and welcome back. I'm Crazed Porcupine, your host for this week's menu of spice and flavor. We've got a great selection of appetizers this week. For appetizers this week, we'll be focusing on MegaMogwai. Prolific deck brewer, he's a popular choice for brewed up decks that are playable enough to climb quite successfully. His decks are always a great option to have a fun, playable deck without as much spice as certain other content creators come up with. First up, we've got Heimerdinger Jace Control, a classic deck that used to be one of the most dominant decks for most of last year. Mogwai's variation includes a couple of Forge of Tomorrows, as well as the addition of Legion of the Severed to help keep Heimerdinger alive, as well as a couple of copies of Passage Unearned, which is a great tech against the sheer number of Mordekaiser decks summoning units that weren't played. A great classic updated with new cards for the current meta is still a fantastic option. Next, we have Riven LeBlanc Reputation, showing off a list from Marshall, the owner of the Runeterra Report Twitter and website, a fantastic resource for all your patch breakdown needs. You can find his decks shown off by Mogwai and Sunny both. This deck features a bunch of units at 5 plus power to get the double death value towards leveling up Mordekaiser, as well as all the Freljord support pieces that help boost the slightly weaker units up into the realm of being 5 plus power to ensure they trigger reputation effects and double deaths for Mord's level up. This deck is a fun option for anyone looking for a unique take on Mordekaiser. Third, we have Shen Riven. This is one of the decks that Mogwai took to the Open this weekend. This is an aggro deck determined to protect Riven or Shen and use the fragments to ensure any attacks are going at an advantage. Spicy inclusions for the deck are Trifarian Training Pits to get extra rallies once per turn, as well as Spirit's Refuge for some sneaky lifesteal to have that little bit of extra sustain in a pinch. Strong competitive deck that can take you far. Following up, we have Neela, Jack, and Janna Brash, which isn't too dissimilar from some of the Brash decks that were brought to Worlds, but this version has a focus on doing enough damage in a turn to be able to one-shot the enemy Nexus, regardless of how much health they have, by using Neela's boat to give everyone Brash to help ensure everyone can get in without getting blocked. For the next deck, we've got Malphite Talia focusing on creating as many rock bears as possible. This is the next deck that Mogwai took to the Open, the first being the Shen Riven deck. It's a pretty standard Malphite Talia deck that features enough stalling tools to ensure you can survive to have all your landmarks count down and get Malphite on the board. That's everything that Mogwai revealed this week, with his final video just covering his run through the Runeterra Open. Give his video a watch, as it's got some great clips showcasing his decks and some great tips for how to run those decks if you want to run them yourself when climbing up the ladder. Next, we're going to cover only 3 decks from Sunny. His first deck is a LeBlanc Volibear deck featuring Monument to True Ice. That landmark is the Freljord landmark that raises health up to the power of a unit, and it also features deathless units, generally which have low health. This creates a cycle of deathless units which, when they first spawn, get max health, and then when they die, when they revive, they also get brought back up to their health, equaling out their power. This deck allows units to overstat and overwhelm the opponent by constantly forcing disadvantageous trades from your opponent. Second, we have a meta breaker deck in Lysandra Volibear with Shadow Isles as the second region. This deck is heavy on the removal, and is meant to be able to prey upon the formidable decks at the top of the meta, while ramping up to eventually drop down a War Mother's Call to cheat out big units every turn. Finally, we've got an Ari Kennen deck focused on generating pranks to make your opponent's cards just worse and worse. Focusing on units like Otterpuss and Benemone, and utilizing Tailcloak Monarch, it can generate a lot of planks really quickly to ensure that you always know what your opponent has, and making their cards worse. Overall, our other notable creators in Visionary decks is taking some well-deserved time off from uploading content, while the Legends 27 has 3 spicy brews this week. His first option is Gwen Elder Dragon, utilizing Hallowed to ensure that you always have enough power when attacking to be able to level up Elder Dragon without much issues. Unique additions for the deck are Skulking String Puller, the 6-cost unit from Noxus that grows allies' power up to its power, making it a fantastic option to receive the Hallowed buffs to carry over to the rest of your units. The other notable inclusions are a couple copies of Tiana Crownguard to get an extra rally, and Scuttlegeist to have a cheap unit that still triggers the Elder Dragon boons. His second deck is Elder Dragon Lurk, relying heavily on the standard Shurima Lurk package, plus a few decent additions to help boost power in general. This deck features 2 Elder Dragon region units that aren't already in Shurima, the Seinen Thousand-Tailed and Incisive Tactician. Utilizing steady, consistent buffing of lurkers, this deck also aims to turbo-level Elder Dragon to win the game. Finally, we have Jhin Seraphine Control. This deck is mostly there for the fact that Seraphine decks generate a lot of fast and slow spells, making it easy to get Jhin leveled up quickly to really control the board. The deck isn't as good as Jhin Annie or other versions of Jhin decks, but it has a lot more versatility in what it can do and handle. Now that's it for our community brews this week. So now we're moving on to our flavor of the week. Saturday the 13th was the first Runeterra Open of 2024. While there weren't any competitive points up for grabs, nor any prize money, it was still a great way to get into the mood for competitive LOR for the year. Aikado was our winner for North America for day 2 of the Open. That's a big congrats to Aikado, since he also won the Eternal Open in November. Aikado's lineup for the Open was pretty much identical to his Worlds lineup. After all, it's the same patch, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Respect Your Elders, Morgana Moore, and Seraphine Set have been a consistent tournament lineup since the Worlds tournament, and the first Open of the year hasn't changed a thing. Aikado, unfortunately, hasn't made videos for some time, but you can find plenty of information on all 3 of these decks from the likes of Majin Bay and other Legends of Runeterra pros who still put out regular content. Skrallio was our winner for EMEA, and he brought Teemo Yuumi Elusives, Jinx Discard Aggro, and Seraphine Set. This is another common lineup that was taken out to Worlds, and is quite potent into the slower lineups that other competitors brought. Overall, congrats to Skrallio for his Open win and a great start to 2024. Our final winner was for APAC, and that was Frosty Bear. His lineup was Respect Your Elders, Teemo Yuumi Elusive, and Karma Set with Piltover. Another standard lineup that carried over from the Worlds tournament. Overall, the lineups were pretty much the same lineups that we saw at Worlds with some slight variations. In regards to the top played decks of the week, there haven't been much changes compared to last week, with the only new addition into the top 5 being Gwen Zed moving into the 4th spot, and Annie Jhin being pushed down out of the top 5. Win rates are also about the same for all 5 of the top 5 decks, and so overall, not really too much to go over there. Now, moving into our hyper janky brews from yours truly. Again, all of these decks that I brew up for Ornn's Kitchen will always be on my profile at runeterra.ar. First, we've got Ken and Vayne Aggro. Featuring Black Flame and Elusive units, this deck is meant to just go, go, go. Crushing down your opponent with multiple attacks per round from the likes of Cataclysm and Vayne's Tumble. This deck can stack up damage fast, and Elusives still end up being difficult units to get rid of, even with all the new ways to handle Elusives. Next up, we've got Zed Elder Dragon. Taking advantage of Ionia's ability to buff up the entire board, it makes it really easy to reach 75 total power to eventually level up Elder Dragon. However, this deck does only have 4 units that can trigger Elder Dragon boons, so Elder Dragon is only ever really going to come down really late into the game. But there's enough draw and unit flooding to ensure you can get there. Overall, this week's decks aren't quite as out there as last week's, but they're still unique decks that you won't see anywhere else. Anyways, that's all for today, and thanks again for watching. I'll see you again next week when we come back and see what might have changed.